Hi everybody! Given the recent events that have been going on in our country, I have felt a personal responsibility to educate myself more about the Black experience and understand Black culture as a whole so that I can empathize better with those who have been experiencing racism or white supremacy in our country. In turn, I've also felt the responsibility to educate my circle of friends and family who I can interact with on social media, which is why I've been making some of these videos to talk about what I have learned. So I like to make them related to speech-language pathology since this is an area I'm fairly well educated in and one that I'm passionate about. So today I want to talk about African American Vernacular English. It's also known as Black English, African American English, Ebonics, or if you're NPR, a Blaccent. So there are three things that I wanted to share with you that I have learned about African American Vernacular English. And the first one is its origins. African American Vernacular English would have stemmed from the time of slavery. So it would have originated because it's a mix of General American English, like the kind of accent that I'm using with you, and West African dialects that would have come from the people who came over to the United States to be enslaved. Because these people needed to communicate with each other, it created what we can call a Creole language, and that is a mix of two languages that are used to communicate, but then becomes an entirely new language in and of itself. And that's where African American Vernacular English would have originated. Obviously, it's grown and evolved a lot over the years, but many people in the United States speak African American Vernacular English. But the weird part is that not everybody who does that is Black. Sometimes it depends on the area that you grew up in or the socioeconomic state that you live in, but many people speak either African American Vernacular English or different versions of a very similar dialect. The second thing to note about it is that African American Vernacular English is grammatical and it is rules-based. There's a very intricate system that comes along with learning African American Vernacular English, and it's been said that children who grow up learning both that and General American English are almost speaking two entirely different languages, because African American Vernacular English has its own special tense system, its own phonology, and its own suprasegmentals that go along with speaking it. And they employ this phenomenon called code switching. And what code switching is taking the two or more dialects that you're familiar with and using them in different social contexts depending on the people you're speaking to. President Obama is a great example of this because you can hear when he's giving speeches to a majority white audience, he'll mostly use the General American English dialect, whereas if he's speaking to a majority Black audience, he might slip into African American Vernacular English. It depends on what population he's trying to relate to. The third thing to know about African American Vernacular English is that it is very highly stigmatized in our society. A lot of people don't know the rich history or the origins of African American Vernacular English, and it's very frequently labeled as broken English or ghetto. And this is just plain not correct. I always mess this up. The American Speech Language and Hearing Association, or ASHA, is our National Board of Speech Language Pathologists. And they put out a position statement talking about our treatment of African American Vernacular English in the speech therapy setting, which is that we do not correct a dialect. Because it is dialectal, it's considered a language difference and not a language disorder. It has its own rules, its own system of usage, and its own context in which it's most frequently used, and therefore, we don't count it against them when we evaluate students for language impairment, and we don't try to correct them out of this dialect because it is something that they grew up learning, and it's something that is understandable and one that if they wanted to switch to General American English or between, they're able to. So it's important that we remember that due to a history of racism and white supremacy in our country, AAVE gets a really bad rap from a lot of folks, and it's very important that whenever you hear someone speaking African American Vernacular English, to not immediately stereotype them as speaking broken English or speaking incorrectly. It's just their dialect. I've linked a lot of really informative and interesting videos down below that you can go ahead and look at if you would like a more in-depth analysis of how AAVE works and its linguistic implications. As an SLP nerd, it was totally fascinating to me, and I hope that you can look at these and learn a little bit more about the African American experience as I have. If you ever have any questions for me or you want to start a dialogue or correct me on anything that I may have gotten wrong, feel free to email me at katie.johnson1095@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.